Not Coronzon by Octavia Gold. My great grandfather was a constable in Bridal Veil Lake after having served proudly in World War One. He knew what happened at the Scout House, which was originally called the Clubhouse, and he never told a soul. It bothered him, and he felt compelled to write about it in his journal, which he gave to his daughter, my grandmother, who gave it to me. The writing is messy, and some is in a kind of shorthand, so I've tried my best to pull it together to be comprehensible, yet maintaining as much of the original tone and language as possible. Anyway, here's what I've got.
They killed that boy there. He was an orphan. His name was Terence.
That's the first entry in the journal. It is undated, just like all the others, but I think it's in the 1920s. The next part is a compilation of scattered entries which I've tried to piece into a single linear account.
Bad night, Charlie. That's what the sergeant said. Bad night, Charlie. Like it was just a bad night, and these things happen sometimes. He warned me against talking about what I'd seen because there are some in the force in this, you know? And nobody was there doing anything they didn't want to. I couldn't believe that. How can we serve and protect at the same time we torture and sacrifice? I'm a God-fearing man. I've read the Bible, but I never heard the name Coronzon before. My partner and I were sent to the clubhouse sometime past midnight. Not long after that, at least. We got no information from the runner they sent. He was bloodless in the face and found the breath to murmur nonsense, though he had run 6 miles. We drove up the hill and saw a crowd of men outside the clubhouse. A few I recognized from the day shift. Most were strangers, and amongst them were masons in their fine black suits, and others in robes and other strange attire. I'd heard of an odd troop of occultists visiting the area, and it wasn't clear if they were tourists or performers. Johnson at the pub wouldn't stop talking about it, and said he might visit their camp down by the lake. Some kind of sex cult, according to him, and thought that might be interesting to see. They use magic too, apparently. It sounded like the usual rubbish that came through Bridal Veil Lake. However, one of them, a white man in a large turban and vest adorned with arcane-looking sigils, glared at us as we came to a stop on the road. An unsettling feeling consumed me before I exited the motor. An inspector in plain clothes intercepted us and told us this was a simple quarrel between gentlemen. Yet, all in the vicinity were silent. So quiet, I could hear the gentle wind. He told us to go inside and bar the door, as there had also been an accident. His remarks did not prepare Donald and I for what we saw next. Blood. A syrupy layer of it stretching out from the center of a circle, consisting of markings and writing. There were candles too, but made of red and black wax. This scant light was all we had to see by, aside from the old lanterns we carried. There were chairs set up around the circle, and most had been knocked down. I nearly jumped out of my skin when the inspector grasped my shoulder. He repeated his instructions to bar the door. A cleanup crew was on the way. I asked about a physician, and he shook his head. He told us also, with great emphasis, not to go into the bathroom. Donald asked the inspector what had happened, but the inspector told him it was none of his business, and to keep it that way.
I noticed that my grandfather didn't describe anywhere in the journal what happened while they waited, but I believe some weird shit occurred because he scattered random lines all over the pages like the clock broke at midnight and the blood moved. It moved. We saw it. They were there long enough that the candles were burnt down. The next portion is what I gathered from a really messy part of the journal. My great grandfather's handwriting looks different, which leads me to believe that he only wrote small bits at a time over years, maybe. He developed a drinking problem by his own admission.
Donald heard somebody in the bathroom. He let out a howl and came running back out. When I calmed him down some, he told me to look. I wish I didn't listen to him. I went in and saw Terence. He was bloody from head to toe and naked. They had him bound at the wrists and ankles in a chair inside the tub. There were long, deep cuts all over him. I thought of an animal attacking him, like a bear perhaps. But only men with knives could replicate such injuries. Before I could leave, Terence opened his eyes. "It isn't Coronzon. It isn't Coronzon," he said twice. His breath was shallow, and he died a few seconds after, right in front of me. There were occultist objects, candles, and a skull. Another circle, similar to the one covered in blood in the main room, had been drawn with ashes on the bathroom wall. It contained no symbols or writing, however. I found myself staring at it longer than necessary. I left the bathroom, and Donald asked what we should do. I didn't know. The boy was dead, I told him. We continued waiting. Donald wept. Then, another noise. A loud crash followed by the sound of wood splintering came from the bathroom. "He isn't dead!" Donald cried joyfully, and before I could stop him, he ran back into the bathroom where Terence, though it was only his body, of that I am sure, ambushed him. It was well dark in there, and I mostly only heard the rending of flesh and bones as the boy twisted Donald's head around until his neck broke. I think I shouted, or shrieked perhaps. Time hesitated mercifully, so I could draw my revolver and kill what the bloody boy had become as he took a few steps toward me. I swear I must have put all 6 bullets into him before he finally ceased to advance. I reloaded and emptied again into the base of his skull without thinking about it, and was about to repeat the process when a strong hand seized my wrist. It was the pale man in the turban, with the serious eyes and overwhelming presence. The inspector and the other men and some more were there. "Come along, Charlie," the sergeant said. "He's gone." "It's still here," the serious man said, "I think." But no one listened. I was guided like a child to the grassy patch beneath a tree. It was very much like the unsettling calm after fighting in a trench. You could drink and smoke and sleep. Efforts to bring your mind away from chaos to normalcy when you somehow knew such stability would never come within reach again. Oh God, the horror. What is this place? What are we? "Bad night, Charlie," the sergeant said, expecting me and the world to start moving again.
There is more, but a lot is rambling or fully illegible. I could try to decipher some if you want. I'm open to discussing it further if you'd like to bounce some ideas around. As for the location and the aftermath of the event and the Scout House building itself, I have gleaned from my great grandfather's writings and my grandmother's own accounts that the clubhouse was given to the Boy Scouts of Canada and then turned over frequently until eventually it was left unoccupied. No one seems to have ever been charged with the murder of the boy, Terence, and all were encouraged not to speak of it. If you put Coronzon into a search and watch, you're served up a bunch of Japanese anime. I gather there's a character by this name. In the same search, however, you'll see a wiki page for Coronzon with an H. Chorronzon, a demon that some guys wrote about back in the 16th century. More interesting, though, is the connection to Aleister Crowley, a guy who started a sex cult in 1907, the Lima, and he believed that he could do magic. I looked into it further, and there's no record of Crowley coming to Bridal Veil Lake or any of his Thelemites, for that matter. The intense man my great-grandfather wrote about was not Aleister Crowley, and I'm 95% certain of that. However, Crowley did apparently write about summoning Coronzon, identifying the demon as an embodiment of insanity and chaos. In the ritual, there's a circle full of arcane signs. It's freaky stuff, and it's hard to take at face value. The interesting part is that Crowley seems to admit that he failed, that his attempt at summoning Coronzon got violent and nearly ended in bloodshed. And I'm thinking, if he was a total fraud, then why would he tell people that he had failed? He must have really believed in his own religion then. The similarity between his account and what my great grandfather wrote is one hell of a coincidence, without a relation to Thelema. Still, there's one difference between each summoning that I can't overlook. Crowley successfully summoned Coronzon and wrote that he could not control it. Terence, however, said that it wasn't Coronzon. I'm not a believer in this spooky stuff, but was Terence saying that someone else had been brought forth? Or could he have been implicating somebody? I guess my lengthy email contains more questions than answers, and I'm sorry. I will write to you again if I think of anything more or if my searches turn up any new leads.